Ladies and gentlemen, this is Jay Michaels and I'm 56 years old. Why do I start that way? Why didn't I just say, hi, we're in the Passion Pit? Because I'm at an age to play certain roles. I have with me a group of young, very talented, very ambitious actors that are playing those roles. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, which is one of the most powerful, one of the most devastating, one of the most intense plays written by Edward Albee and basically by any author of the 20th century. And now a production is going to be done by Face-to-Face Films on Zoom. This follows their normal procedure where they take a play turned into a movie, and now they're going to turn it into a Zoom presentation. And this is one of those examples. Now, I was recently told that Elizabeth Taylor was only 36 when she played the role of Martha. But this is Elizabeth Taylor. And Richard Burton, who played the role of George, was sufficiently older. And both of them had been through the mill. They had been divorced already at least once. Actually, they both had been divorced from other people several times and from each other at least once. And there was rumors of alcoholism and infidelity and so many other things in their lives. So when you talk about playing characters that have been kicked around, Burton and Taylor could certainly have done it. But we have some very young faces here. Let's find out how they're going to climb the mountain that is Virginia Woolf. I'll start with their illustrious director, who's the only one who's breached the 30-year-old line. Anthony, Laura, tell us about the production, tell us about you, tell us about your cast and your thinking in doing this mammoth.
Yeah, so Edward Albee is one of my favorite playwrights, and we were looking at different works that we were going to do. So we decided to start with Virginia Woolf. But early on, actually before the pandemic, Alex and Samantha and I had discussions about doing The Goat, which we're doing next month. And we were also in talks of trying out A Delicate Balance. However, Virginia Woolf seemed to go a little more with the themes that we as a company like to do. It was also inspirational in the play that I wrote, The Girl with the Red Hair. It actually was very inspirational for me becoming a writer, understanding the play as a whole. And so here's the thing with the casting is I didn't really think about it. As soon as I decided, I actually texted each of the four of them very close to the same time and asked if they would do it. And we all just agreed that it was right. So the way that I feel about casting in terms of having younger actors in older roles, for me, it is also kind of a little bit metaphorical in what you can see. It's kind of like seeing these young actors, what these characters would be like if you heard these words when they were younger. Things of that sort.
Okay, so you're trying this sort of experiment, if you will, to add a little innocence to these roles.
Absolutely, and also I think a lot of what we're finding, with the exception of the mentions of the timelines in terms of how long Martha and George were married, or any mention of when they first met, things like that. I don't think these scenarios are very far removed from someone who could experience them at this age.
Okay, now there's something interesting. So now we're talking the millennial approach, if you will. Would you say now, I believe age-wise you're all within that category. Would you say that your lives are, I won't say on par or comparable or anything like that, because we're talking about people who live through wars and all sorts of recessions. But do you think that you have had, do you think you've been kicked around enough to be able to summon up what these characters need? Anthony, do you think as a director, you have had enough in your life that you could summon? How do you tell these people, have you had enough in your life that when someone says, well, how do I play this character? And I won't spoilers for the two people who have not seen the show in this world. How do you tell them how to play these down and out, these tragic characters? What do you summon up in you?
So the way that I feel in terms of your question about wars and things like that is that history repeats itself constantly. And even though we are not in the era of the 60s right now, we are still dealing with things, particularly politically, that are repeating themselves that we can call from. In terms of, you know, I have this conversation, I've had the conversation with the four of them, and I've spoken to you, it really is a case-by-case basis. There are some people who live their lives very sheltered and very, not that they have an easy life, but an easier life where they don't deal with as many pressures. But I don't think that, that's everyone. I think people in their 30s, I mean, I know people who are my age, which is 36, who have been divorced 3 times. You know, so I don't think the amount of baggage that these two have is only because they were married for so long. I think it's who they are and how they deal with their problems, and how they benefit or don't benefit psychologically from how they react.
Interesting. You made a point of saying politically. Yes, we are in a very tense world, and I guess I'm going to have to agree with you. Yes, right about now, no matter what age you are, we're focused on what kind of country we're going to have after November, and if I dare I say, if we have a country after November. So you bring up a really good point that, you know, maybe the exact pain is not there, but everyone has that kind of pain. All right, let's chat with your actors now. I'll start with my old buddy Vivien. Vivien, you have played mature characters throughout your time here with Theater Interrupted, the ongoing series for face-to-face films. So you've always had to pluck something from you in terms of age. What do you got to pluck now? You're playing Martha in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. What did you have to do to summon up that character in you?
I think for me, it's trying to, there's some things that you can only experience through age. And so it's like, I'm not even going to try to, you know, emulate that because I haven't lived long enough to be able to, you know, make that connection. But one thing that I can connect with is this thought of, you know, this world weariness and this idea of, you know, just having the weight of the world on your shoulders and just having so much pressure. And I think that's a universal feeling that any person, regardless of their age, regardless of their circumstance, regardless of their economic status, anyone can experience that. And so I think making the connection through that, through the trauma, through the stress there, and going off of that and building upon that has really helped me. And I think I've also had the advantage of my entire career as an actor. I have usually been like the only child actor in the cast. I've been surrounded by adults. So I kind of felt like I had to grow up very fast myself. And so I always felt like a little miniature adult. I couldn't connect with kids my own age because I thought on a different level. My sense of humor was beyond. And so I felt a little out of touch with my peers. So,
oh, you bring up a really good point. So you always worked with older actors when you were younger. In your formative years, you worked with a lot of older actors.
Yeah, I mean, you know, especially on Everwood, we had like a couple of child guest stars, but the main characters were, you know, at least a decade older than me.
Wow. Okay, so you actually you didn't have it happen to yourself, but you were immersed in such problems that happen to more mature individuals within the theater. So you can almost emulate their lives, if you will, in terms of their own interest. I years and years ago, I was probably around the age of most of you. I did a musical called Promises, Promises, and I played an elderly doctor, and they had to gray up my hair. They don't anymore, but they had to gray up my hair and the whole works. And the nicest compliment I got, because my character had one number where I had to dance, someone came backstage and turned to one of the other actors and said, "Hey, great show, a lot of fun. How did they get the old guy to dance?" And I was thrilled because at that point, maybe I was 25. So for them to call me an old guy means apparently I emulated it, and you struck the memory in me. I did a lot of that myself. I was the kid amongst all the adults within various productions. And I guess that rubs off. I guess some of it rubs off. Do you feel you're being effective? Okay, I'm using an example with someone who was convinced I was old. I never tried getting on the bus for half fare at that point, but what are you going to do? Do you feel you're being effective when you are rehearsing what you're tapping into? Do you feel the connection? Do you feel like you're connecting?
I do, to the point where sometimes it's hard to walk away from it. But you have to kind of go deeper and make that connection, because otherwise it won't be authentic. You have to find the similarity, the commonality between yourself and your character. And if you can do that, then that's when you start becoming that character. Unfortunately, when it's something that's a little bit deeper and more traumatic, and it's fueled by those kinds of things, then the issue becomes, how am I able to walk away from this? And how do I jump back into it over and over and over again? How do I build that healthy separation?
How are you able to walk away from it?
Support, having a huge support group. That allows me to say, like, okay, this is rubbing off on me. I need a minute. Just working with this, ensemble has been amazing. Having a huge support group with my own family who understands that it's okay. Vivien's like a little agitated today. It must be something that she's having a difficult time separating. And then just also, breathing exercises, meditation, just remembering that I can step out of it and I can develop these healthy habits. Exercise has been huge for me. So just trying to find those healthy ways of being able to cope with all of it.
Wow. Okay. Meditation. Excellent. Good for you. Good for you.
Thank you.
That's definitely wise thinking. Anthony, quick question to you. When you direct Vivien, now you've put her into these mature roles all over the place. She was an aged nun in Doubt. I know she was an older doctor in another production, and now here she is. And I won't venture to guess as to what's coming up this season. Why Vivien? Why is Vivien your go-to for more mature roles? What do you see in her that works for these characters?
The interesting thing is we don't really talk about the roles until we get into the rehearsal room. So I think there is just something empathic about Vivien in these roles that I don't feel I need to discuss very much with her. And then when we get into the rehearsal room, I think it is about her opening it up to teaching me about the roles as well from that perspective.
Cool. Very cool. Okay. Alex, you're playing George, and the tragedy of that role is incredible. By the end, when all the exposition comes out, here is a beaten man. When I first saw it, I was stunned. When I finished the movie, I was just like, okay. Like, Vivien, I need a break and I need to meditate. What do you do? You're in your late 20s. What do you tap into? Where do you go? Where do you find George? How did you create your role?
What I tend to do is just really use my imagination a lot, because I don't think you always necessarily need to have the same life experiences at all as the roles you play. That could be very beneficial, but it would also burn you out if you're always using your personal life to play these roles. So what I do is I think that none of us, no matter how easy our life was or hard our life is or when we lived or what times we're in, like I don't think anyone really has a shortage of pain in their heart. I think everyone goes through so much. So yeah, it's I just kind of think about his circumstances, George's circumstances, until they become a feeling inside of me. And then it's something that I can go into kind of at will, but it definitely takes prep work of, yeah, like kind of I'll go for a walk and I'll you know, think about him, and then I'll let go of it and forget about it. And then I don't know if that answers, but.
It sounds to me like what you basically do, you do two things. Number one, you consider what he's going through, and you're almost like a student picking up new material and saying, okay, what happened to this man? You're almost doing a history lesson, and you're imagining what it was like for this. So you're learning about his tragedy, it sounds like. And then there's this slight comparisons to your own. It sounds like you said, not everybody has the same tragedies. So maybe you take that moment and said, I remember when this happened to me and it devastated me. So did George feel like that? So we have a little Stanislavski, a little Meisner, and a little Alex in terms of techniques.
Sometimes, yeah. I don't actually take specific experiences because they don't match. So if I'm thinking about like when my dog died or something, it's not the same thing. So, but I guess what I was saying was that there is enough like suffering or pain in my heart, and I think anyone's heart, to be able to fuel these roles. And so I just understand the circumstances enough that I can kind of like put them on. Like I put myself, it's like a burden, and I put myself inside of it, and then whatever pain I do authentically feel in my life is kind of the fuel for that.
You bring up the valid point. A lot of people say, oh, you don't know what it's like to be. No, but they don't know what it's like either. So your pain is your pain. And maybe they said, well, you know, I've had worse. Maybe they did in their lives, but what's hurt you is what's hurt you.
Yeah. I mean, we never know what other people go through. And so I totally agree. I totally agree.
Okay, to both of you, how about physicality? We have just so much in a box, which is true. But there's the old joke Robert Klein used to say whenever he'd play old men, he'd do the palsy shake, you know, he'd suddenly do this and whatever. And in the days of Shakespeare, everybody suddenly put on the Shakespeare voice to be old. Ironically, speaking of Shakespeare, in his day, it was the other way around. And for centuries, it was the other way around. Older actors played younger roles because they thought younger actors didn't have the wherewithal, didn't have the pain in their hearts, if you will, to play them. That a 16-year-old could not be Juliet because she just didn't know. So it always went to older people, and that has changed over the centuries. And so it looks like we're having the same sort of switch here. What do you both have to do physically within the parameters of the little box to show us the age of the characters, to show us the wear down of the characters? Anthony, I'll include you in this also. What did you have to do to instruct them in terms of the visibilities of the characters?
Sure, yeah. The biggest thing that we spoke about was not actually in terms of physicality, in terms of age, because we don't do that. In fact, we've made it a point not to. We feel that in these roles, it's better to hear them. Because we do not have the ability to move around. We have certain ability for costume, not very much for makeup. Why put on a show that might not land properly in these boxes. So we chose to say, particularly with Vivien and Alex, and I did this in Doubt as well, is we are not going to play them as 50, but we're going to take their experiences as 50 or 40 or whatever they are in the script and take them on. The physicality came actually from the night of drinking and how much that affects the night, how much that affects every single character handles their alcohol differently. Some drink more at times than others. Some can just constantly drink. But I think the most important thing, and I was discussing, yes, Alex, I was discussing this with Vivien recently, is this is actually not a play about drunks. It's about people who are drinking this evening, particularly because of problems, because they want to get ahead in their career, because there are things that they're trying to hide. And I've seen productions where the alcohol is the main focus. But to take the alcohol out of it is not this play. And that is something that we did need to consider even in these boxes, is when we're drinking, how it's affecting the acts moving forward. Because a lot of the exposition that is revealed in the play, some of it only comes from being drunk.
Interesting you say that about the drinking. Vivien, Alex, what did you have to do then? I'll amend my question slightly, knowing the production scheme. Not to play the age, but play the drunk. What was the research in terms of drinking? Now, again, I'm sort of still waffling on the age, because someone who's my age drinking and someone who's your age drinking, it's two different kinds of inebriation. What did you have to do? What did it create in you to be drinking throughout all of this? How did it affect you in terms of character?
I think for me, it's like it was the trying to discover what kind of a drunk Martha is. Is she a happy drunk? Is she a slutty drunk? Is she a, miserable drunk? And I've discovered that she's all the above. So she's just a whole mixture of things. And so it's just a matter of, what the effects of the alcohol would have on someone who is drinking over the course of the night. I mean, when you think about it, it's like, well, everyone's kind of putting on a certain act, right? You're trying to be a certain way. You're trying to impress someone. The more you drink, the more you stop caring about that kind of stuff. And so it's more of a matter of letting your inhibitions down, letting, just being more blunt about things, or being more careless about the things that you want to say, the choices that you make. So it was more about that. And instead of trying to play like, oh, I'm totally drunk right now, just like trying to have those elements of what happens when you are drunk. And so I think, at least on my level, I have had enough experiences of being drunk to kind of understand what that entails. So trying to use that, but also merging it with what's happening in the story right now. What's going on with her? What does she want? What is she struggling with? And how those two mix together.
I had a colleague once who would have one drink the whole night, but he'd nurse it the whole night. And whenever he wanted to say something blunt, he'd say, don't mind me, I'm drunk, but this is what, and he'd say his mind. And we'd all think he's drunk. And so we would forgive him for whatever he would say. When it was, I found out years later, he'd have one cocktail and it would last 4 hours. But if he wanted to talk about politics or about his feelings on something, he claimed to be drunk. And that was it. So it's interesting you say what they become, what they need when they are drunk. Alex, how about you? How about what kind of drunk are you?
Well, I kind of drink everyone under the table, to be totally honest. My character is definitely the least affected by the alcohol, and he has, I'd say, definitely the sharpest wit. And so what I do throughout it is, because like you said, like when you're drunk, you never think I'm drunk, or you're never like being drunk on purpose. you're just so uninhibited. So what I do is I just feel, it's kind of like a feeling, like I feel a wall kind of within me. That's kind of the usual censor between like how you feel and how you act. And then throughout it, I feel it slowly, it already starts farther down than most people have because he's drunk coming into it. And I feel it kind of going down until by act 2, I'd say, I kind of just let it go. And so, but that's not even as the character, that's as me too. Because even in this interview or anytime we're talking to people, we all have a certain wall that's up because we kind of have to be like a civilized person. I can't start talking about how I'm like kind of hungry right now, or like I didn't have enough you know what I mean? You can't like, so I try to just totally let that wall down as Alex, so that the character that I'm playing is like you are when you're drunk. There's not really a disconnect between how you feel and what you think and like how you act. It's just kind of all out there.
It's interesting. So you have the facade up until you drink, and then the facade comes down. Like the way you're talking, it's Alex drunk, it's George drunk, but it's George, it's Alex.
Yeah, and it's not even it is a facade, of course, but like it's more just being considerate. Like we're not gonna be all out there all the time, so we have to have this certain censor within us. But the more drunk I get in life, and I think the more drunk anyone gets, it's the censor is gone, the filter is gone.
Interesting, very interesting. Speaking of alcohol, let's talk to Gabe and Sebi. Why do I say that they're the alcohol? Because they are. In this play, more than the alcohol, you two are the alcohol in this play. I always think that the catalyst is the fact that here are these two young people coming in, these two hopeful, bright, happy, joyous people embarking on their lives, and they're talking to these two people who are embarking on the end of their lives. And so the rainbow comes in and then gets kicked around a great deal for this play. Gabe, tell us about, now you're playing this young, ambitious teacher that has stepped into this university. Tell us about your character. Tell us about what you did to create this particular role, because as nice as he is, no spoilers, keep watching the show. What did you have to do to create your character?
Yeah, actually, I was pretty grateful because throughout high school and college, I don't know, but I guess directors see this like groundedness or maturity that I would always play the grandfather, the father, the older adult male. So those are the roles that I'm always getting. And, I love them. I think they're great because I think to play those roles, you need extra layers. You need to be like, sort of grounded in them. So when this came along, when Anthony came up with this challenge for me, he gave me a young role to play with. So I'm all game for that. And Nick, we have a lot of similarities. So that wasn't really that hard to tap into that. We're both very logical. We're both very pragmatic, ambitious. So, the same age even. So that transition for me wasn't too difficult, for sure.
What was there something you went, oh man, how am I going to do this?
Yeah. I guess he's a little unethical, a little immoral. He likes to game the system to his advantage, and he can be really ruthless at times with that. So that tapping into that like harsh reality of him was eye-opening, and I had to like explore that a little bit to get comfortable with that tenacity. Yeah, so motivation.
So you had to figure out how to be larcenous. You had
bit, yeah.
Vincent Price used to say he loved to play villains because
I love villains.
Where else can you play such types of people except in roles that justify it? And what did you do to justify in you to play, and I won't say you're a villain, but to play that gamer of the system, to play the guy who's skirting around the issue? What did you have to summon or create to make it worth your while?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's always awfully cathartic to play the villain role, because as you say, you only really get to play it on stage if you want to be a good person in this world. But for me, and I believe all villains in plays and musicals, at least the well-written ones, have very justifiable intentions. Like they themselves don't see themselves as the villain. They see themselves as the protagonist in their story. So for Nick, it's about how am I justifying my actions? What do I have to believe to think that I'm doing what's right in the situation? And there's a lot of things he does. I think Nick is very is actually very caring, and he can be very compassionate, and he's, I think, a considerate human being. And I think going for what's best for him, he thinks is, could be best for the people around him. And so I think tying that back to his ambition, I think he can justify his ignoble actions by seeing that, this is all for a greater purpose, for the benefit of other people. So it's in justifying his actions. And I don't think he thinks he's a bad person. I think he just thinks he has goals to achieve. And, if you have to do a couple things here and there to get them, as long as nobody gets hurt, what's the harm in that?
That's so interesting you say that. Bill Maher, who I pray to, yes, he's a comedian, but his political commentary, I think, is spot on. He at one time was talking about the current state of affairs, and he was talking about George Bush. And he was saying the one thing which he could say about George W. Bush was that he believed what he was doing. That, we could say what we want, but he thought he was really being patriotic and really doing things for this country. So I guess Nick is saying, okay, I don't know if this is good, but this is good for me, and this is going to be profitable for the world or the university in the end. So he's created his justification, and so have you.
And as long as nobody gets hurt, then what's the harm?
Right. Oh, that's very clever. Oh, good for you. Okay, Sebi, you have the hardest job in this play, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
One of the first acting tenets I ever learned was you must forget. In order to be surprised on stage, you have to realize that the phone may not ring, that someone's not coming through the door. So you get to go, what? You don't. How many times in bad productions do you hear, oh, I'll get it, ring? They did the line before the sound or whatever. Your character you as a human being, I would think, have to forget so much to be this innocent, dragged along for the ride. What is the character's name again?
Honey.
That's why I wanted you to say it. Honey. Not Cynthia, not Lorelei, not Joan. Honey. You have to be this and you're not even called sugar. You're called the natural sweetness. You're called honey. What did you have to forget? What did you have to do or not do to and I guess you're in the case of your character, everyone else comes into this beaten in some way. Even Nick needs to play the system. You come in and you get beaten in this play. What did you have to do to make every pummel hurt? What did you have to do to really be attacked as the character is in this and make it real for you?
Yeah, because it is tough because, I mean, without giving things away, she doesn't pick up on some stuff that's pretty obvious, but also she could, and that could be how it kind of nails down that hurt in the end. So you're right, it was like a lot. My initial reaction wouldn't be to not pick up on those things. I'm very attentive to all those little details, especially around like romantic partners. So that's something I had to forget. And At the same time, I think we have a lot in common though. So Anthony said he just kind of assigned these roles and that's just how it played out. But it was funny, like they were discussing like one aspect of the play, and I'm maybe one of the newer actors. So I like didn't totally understand what was going on. And then I was like, well, Honey might not understand what's going on either. So it kind of works in that way.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So basically for you, it's like, and I'm not saying this accusatory, I'm saying this quite brilliantly. You just said, okay, you know what? I'm not sure what's going on, and I'm going to leave it that way. Let them tell me in the dialogue. Let me tell me in the character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How'd that work for you? How many aha moments did you have? How many times during rehearsal did you go, oh my God, is that what oh my God. How many times did you get punched in the face?
A couple of times. Yeah, that definitely really did happen. Kind of sad about it, but yeah. Because script analysis, I don't know. I just kind of go with what I feel. I don't do a lot of like thinking about it. And I think everybody I work with is super talented in that like background and the analysis and what it means and everything. And that's just not typically how I go. So I learned a lot from everybody here, definitely.
How do you keep learning? How do you keep forgetting? Okay, a rehearsal goes by, you go, oh my God, that's what he means by that. Wow. How do you throw that away so that the next time he says it, you can have the same genuine reaction?
I think that's the challenge, but also it's just staying present in exactly where it is, like not looking ahead to that moment, knowing that it's coming. I just have to literally be right here listening to what Nick is saying, whoever's saying, and let that be the only moment that exists.
Very cool. Vivien, you are the queen of the aha moments during interviews, because if I one day made a reel of you just nodding your head, it would be an amazing one. You looked like you wanted to say something a moment ago in the middle of Sebi's comment.
I was going to say, it's funny because she was saying that we're all about like that script analysis and everything, but I think this is probably one of the most challenging works in that half the time we don't know what we're saying. And so, you know, Anthony has said to us, if at any point you guys don't know what's going on, like just let me know and we're gonna break this down. To the point where there was like this one thing, we're going through this whole dialogue, Anthony stops us, I don't want to give anything away, but Anthony stops us and he's like, do you guys know what you're talking about? And me and Alex and Gabe and Steffi, we were all like, no. He's like, you know, we're talking about this, right? And it was this collective like, oh. And so this has been like such a challenge, but also just amazing to see the different layers of Albie's work. And I think he's become like one of my favorites at this point because it's just brilliant.
I think he was possessed when he wrote this, because you can find every line in this has meanings like they just go forever. A line that's always made me laugh is George at one point, he says, well, Martha is a cyclops. And you think it's really funny. And when I first heard it, and even when I first read it, I thought, it's very funny. And then I realized the legend of the Cyclops in terms of the actual Greek play and what happens to the Cyclops. And then I thought again about the bit in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? And I thought, oh my God, he's the whole connection to this. For all of you, aha moments. Now, Anthony, you obviously researched this, so you better not have too many. But to all of you, give me an example, if you will, of that aha moment where you just went, "Oh my God, is that what's going on? Oh my God, is there that one moment where you just said, oh, give me a minute. This is amazing." Anthony, how about you? Was there ever a point you're watching it and you just went, "Oh my God, that's what it really means," or something like that? What was your ahas?
Yes, but I also just want to say one of the reasons that this exploration has been so exciting is because all four of them had never read Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf before. So the table read was the first time.
I need a moment to meditate on that, but okay, yes.
So that was the big thing, going back to what Vivien was saying, was we had 3 weeks to prepare this, 2 times a week. So there's so much we knew that if we didn't do the work outside, we just can't break it down enough, just the vocabulary alone. I think for me, the aha moments, a lot of them came with George. I've seen the play in a couple of different ways. I've also seen it when they reversed the roles on Broadway, where George was more of the dominant and Martha was more of the submissive. But they don't always show George's pain. They show him as someone who is submissive to Martha, but I think it's the pain in George's lines that in every line that became really, gave me those aha moments for how the play exists. And I think if you don't know the play, I will say that more people talk about Martha. And without George, the play doesn't move.
His retorts, his wit, and his anger at delivering them is what fuels the play. So yes, you're completely right. Speaking of George Alex, was there ever a moment where you just went, "Oh my God, is that what I'm saying? Is that what I'm doing? Is that what she meant when she said that?" What's your aha moment? What was a big aha moment for you?
It's hard to say because it happens all the time, especially if I'm reading the play. I haven't been doing an script analysis really. I've just been reading the play so that I can hopefully just internalize it. But then I'll have a conversation with Anthony and I'll say, well, why did he say this? And it's just a whole string. The whole process has just been and I'm sure I'm not even like halfway where I could be, because these, people do these roles on Broadway for a year and then, discover it 8 months in. But the whole thing has been like that because I was pretty mind blown at how interconnected the whole thing is. It seems like he just wrote it stream of consciousness, and I'm sure he would have had to almost. But so I don't know if it's conscious or subconscious, but it's all tied together on this level that is kind of beyond being able to understand it rationally. So it's I kind of read it like a dream or like a poem, and just hope that these more symbolic, surreal things that I just get them without like knowing how or why.
Interesting. I've always imagined it to be the modern Greek tragedy. So to look at it as a parable or a poem or anything like that, I think you're on the right symbology with it. Gabe, was there ever that point you just went, oh?
Yeah. In a lot of conversations with one-on-ones with Nick and George, a lot comes out. I'm trying to think of one that doesn't spoil anything.
No, good luck.
I know. There was one recent near the end of our runs that completely flew over my head, when they're talking about me, when Martha and George are talking about me, obviously without my name, and it's just euphemisms like throughout, and the language didn't lead to any insinuations until like Anthony mentioned it, and then it all just like ka-chunk kind of like fit in place, clicked instantly, and we all had that moment of like, oh, that's what they were talking about the whole time. And there's no absence of those kind of moments for this play. There is like every nook and cranny of every word you can find some double entendre or some deeper significance that like relates to another character's actions earlier, and it's constant, really. There's no shortage of ahas in this play, I'll tell you that.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Even, and I'll say nothing for anyone else who's not read this play, to call what they call to the scenario that they created, and they call it the bit, I think is the whole play right there. So it's interesting that you're talking stream of consciousness, you're talking insinuations, you're talking metaphors, because they hit it on the head with that. Sebi, you said that ahas came at you right and left. Was there that one that just made you want to cry, that just made you upset, that just did something to you that you just said, oh, okay, I'm going to remember this one for a long time. This will be my theater story when I'm 50. You know, when I was in Virginia Woolf.
Yes, there was, but it's the same thing. It's kind of impossible to talk about it without giving it away. But there was one where I asked Anthony, like, what is this word reference here? And then he explained everything that was happening in that backstory, and I was just like, oh, it's crushing. It's really sad. So, but yeah.
Oh, that must be. I could just see. What does he mean? Oh, well, he means this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Really interesting. Really interesting. Vivien, I will end with you on this. Because actually you've all given me an aha moment, I have to tell you, and I'll mention that in a second, but I end with you. Was there that aha moment for you? Yes, everyone says that Martha seems to be the driving force, but in reality, George is the man behind the woman in this. So the visible driving force is Martha. Was there that aha moment that, and I'm gonna focus your question a little bit, was there that aha moment where you said, okay, it's all on me? It's all on me. I'm going to do this, and then this is what's going to happen. If I don't do this, what's the line from Hamlet? If it's meant to be now, it's not before. If it's, I'm paraphrasing, but was there ever that point where you just said, okay, it's me, it's on me. This is it. This is it moment for you?
Yeah, I think it was really towards the end, you know, where my aha moment was more of an emotional aha moment in that that last monologue she gives about like the bit, you know, there was this one point where I made this connection with what was she really saying, and why was she saying this, and why is it so hard for her to say it? And I made that connection, and it took my breath away to the point where I'm trying to get the words out and I can't because the emotion is just too strong. And then that final scene, I was given the instruction by Anthony was, don't give any emotion, just let the words come out. And the words just started coming out, and it was just this surreal moment. And I was like, this is the moment where everyone's going to be here, zooming in, tuning in to every simple utterance that Martha and George are saying. And this is the most important part of this play. This very last scene makes or breaks it. And so that was that aha moment for me, really.
I know what you're talking about. Yes, what it must have summoned up to do that must have been fascinating. Anthony, last words, last thoughts.
You know, I think at the beginning when we all actually read the play together, because we had also done a reading, private company reading of August Osage County, which had ties in to Virginia Woolf. I think we were struck by the differences in how Albee used language. And that is something in speaking about Streetcar as well, is how important the language is. Because even though this is more of a naturalistic play than Streetcar, understanding, and I think this is something Alex and I spoke about too, is understanding what we're saying, and not just the motivation behind it, was the extra layer this time around. Because there was so much that just needed an investigation. So we could understand where they were coming from and how that affected their motivation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. In speaking to you all, I've come to my own aha moment about this play and so many others in general. There was a form of horror theater in France called the Grand Guignol, and that was this ghoulish sort of special effects laden short plays that were meant to scare people. When it closed in 1962, everyone said the reason it closed was due to Hammer Films, which was doing the same thing on screen, but it really wasn't. In further analyzing it, that's the word, analyzing it. There you go. In analyzing it, it was about the fact that we had seen so much in our lives that the little bit of scary that they gave us was no longer scary. Shakespeare, as I said, for centuries, it was older people playing younger roles because they didn't think young people could have such emotion. And obviously now that has switched because young people can. And I think millennials have been through enough. No, you've not been through what we call a war, but you've been through wars. You've not been through what we call the depression, but you've been through that depression. You've been through the identification of mental illness, of poverty, of racism. You haven't been through it, you've been through the identification of it. And I think that, like you're talking about this play, reading this play and suddenly identifying what they're saying has done that. And whereas when we started this, I was like, okay, you 20 plus pishes, how are you gonna play this roles? I realize, of course you can play these roles. Of course you have it in you. From what I'm hearing of this play, George and Martha just long to be young again, long to be hopeful again. And so to have it played by hopefuls probably is that much more tragic. And Nick and Honey just want to grow up. So to have your roles played by those who are growing up, and we can say, like Nick had pointed out, you're growing up maybe the wrong way. Again, is that much tragic. So I think you guys have really tapped into something rather phenomenal. And if this is executed the way I know it will be, then you're going to start a trend that's going to follow us for centuries.
I mean, I don't think there is a better time to do Virginia Woolf right now. Again, our company deals with a lot in terms of mental illness and stuff like that. And one thing that has been very apparent is how the pandemic is affecting people losing touch with reality.
Yep.
And not to the degree of this, but it can get there, particularly with, again, this isn't a negative about where we are with the pandemic, just a fact that we don't know an end in sight right now. And I think that is something that takes its toll. So again, I just think it adds a different level, because again, if we were doing this, in a theater, people would come outside, they would take the subway to go see us, but they're going to see this from the confines of their home. And I think that will add a layer as well.
I think it adds the layer. I think you're very smart to do it now, because you're right. And what we have are 4 characters who are trapped. And so for us to be trapped and watch this play about 4 characters who are trapped, and 2 characters wish they can go back, as so many of us do, and 2 characters wish they could go forward, as so many characters do. We're looking at a Greek tragedy from such a devastating vantage point. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure talking to you as always. As I said before we started taping, you all are some of the most ambitious during this time. It has not slowed you down. It has only revved you up. Anthony had said to me in an email that he's now picking plays for 2021, because they're just like, okay, maybe the pandemic is no end in sight, but neither is theater interrupted by face-to-face films. You guys are supplying amazing entertainment, amazing education, and amazing enlightenment. And when this all ends and you step back into the audition world, something tells me that you're going to command that scene far more than you ever thought you could. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Anthony, when's the reading?
October 3rd and October 4th at 2 p.m.
Great. And what's the email address if someone wants to get an invite to see it?
face-to-face-readings@gmail.com.
And here's the big 4-letter word beginning with F, free.
Free.
And but you're asking for donations for what charity?
Yeah, suggested donations, 100% goes to the Loveland Foundation.
Right, right, very good. And you yourself have your own foundation that's being formed. What is the Julia Foundation? Tell us quickly about that.
Yeah, the Julia Initiative is something within the company where we provide resources about mental illness, education, things like that, and offer places people can reach out if they need further resources.
Brilliant, daring artists, and they're nice people. I don't know. I must be doing something wrong. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Good luck with the project, and I know I'll be chatting with you all next month at the next very exciting piece. And get ready. I can't wait till you talk about my favorite author in the world, Tennessee Williams. And we talk about Streetcar Named Desire, one of my favorite all-time ever plays. Oh, can't wait to chat with you about that. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Jay.